They didn't warn the new students about the mirror. Not because they forgot, but because everyone who remembered eventually stopped talking about it. Gettysburg College had many secrets buried inside its old stone walls, but only one of them looked back at you. Gettysburg College sits in the heart of Pennsylvania. Founded in 1832, one of the oldest liberal arts colleges in the United States. Beautiful campus, rich history, prestigious reputation. But history has a way of collecting things it was never meant to keep. And at Gettysburg College, inside the oldest dormitory on campus, Glatfelter Hall, there was a mirror. Floor to ceiling, antique gold frame, installed in 1887. Never moved, never replaced. Students passed it every single day. Most never thought twice about it, but the ones who looked too long always seemed different afterward. Quieter, distracted, like they were trying to remember something that kept slipping away. Sara Nolan, a psychology sophomore obsessed with memory and perception. Daniel Cross, her skeptical pre-med roommate. Professor Elaine Marsh, a behavioral psychology professor with a troubled past. James, a senior student who has lived in Glatfelter Hall for 3 years and never once looked at the mirror. Sara Nolan had always been fascinated by mirrors, not in a vain way, in a scientific way. She had written her freshman thesis on how mirrors affect human perception of identity. So when she moved into Glatfelter Hall at the start of sophomore year, the mirror immediately caught her attention. It was massive, positioned at the end of the second-floor hallway, perfectly centered, like it had been designed specifically to be seen from every room on that floor. The frame was ornate gold, slightly tarnished with age, covered in carved patterns that looked almost like faces if you stared long enough. Sara stood in front of it on her first night. She studied her reflection, and then noticed something. Something small. Something wrong. Her reflection blinked, half a second late. She shook her head, rubbed her eyes, told herself it was exhaustion from moving in. Long drive, heavy boxes, tired mind. She walked away, but before she turned the corner, she looked back. Her reflection was still facing forward, still looking at the spot where she had been standing, even though she had already turned away. Sara stood frozen, then blinked again, and the reflection was normal, back in sync. She told herself it was a trick of the light. She almost believed it. The next morning, Sara mentioned it to James, the senior down the hall. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something strange. "I don't look at it." Sara frowned. "What do you mean?" "The mirror," he said. 3 years here. I walk past it every day. I have never once looked directly at it." "Why not?" James leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Freshman year, my roommate looked at it every morning, spent a lot of time in front of it, studying his reflection. He said it helped him think." He paused. 2 months in, he started forgetting things. Small things first. His class schedule, his phone password, his mother's name. Sara's throat tightened. Then bigger things. He forgot who I was. We had lived together for 6 weeks, and one morning he looked at me like a complete stranger. What happened to him? James looked down at the floor. He withdrew from college. His family said he had some kind of rapid memory deterioration. Doctors couldn't explain it. Another pause. He was 19 years old, Sara, perfectly healthy, no history of any neurological condition whatsoever. Sara looked down the hallway at the mirror. From this angle, she could only see its frame, the gold catching the morning light. "You think the mirror did something to him?" James finally looked up. "I think some things exist without explanation, and I think the safest response to those things is to leave them alone." He walked into his room and closed the door. Sara stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the edge of the gold frame, thinking about reflections and memory and how closely the two were connected. Sara was a psychology student. She didn't accept warnings without evidence, so she went looking for evidence. The college archives were housed in a small room beneath the main library, mostly digitized, but some older files still existed only in physical form. Sara requested everything related to Gladfelter Hall from 1880 onwards. The archivist, an older woman with reading glasses on a chain, placed 3 boxes on the table in front of her. "These haven't been requested in years," she said quietly, then added, "Maybe longer." Sara opened the first box. Maintenance records, renovation logs, routine documentation. Nothing unusual. Second box. Student housing assignments going back to 1920. She almost closed it, but something caught her eye. A pattern. Every 3 to 4 years, a student assigned to the second floor of Gladfelter Hall would leave mid-semester. Not transfer, not drop out for financial reasons. Just leave. Medical withdrawal. Always the same listed reason. Acute cognitive dissociation. Sara had studied enough psychology to know what that meant. A disconnection between a person's sense of self and reality. A feeling that your own memories, thoughts, and identity no longer belong to you. She counted. 14 cases. Over 90 years. 14 students. All second floor. All mid-semester. All the same diagnosis. She reached for the third box. Inside was a single folder, no label. Inside the folder, one document. A letter, handwritten, dated 1961, from a Professor Harold Gaines, Department of Psychology, Gettysburg College, to the college president. Sara read it slowly. "I have now observed the phenomenon across 4 separate cases and can no longer in good conscience remain silent. The mirror in Gladfelter Hall's second-floor corridor is not decorative. It was installed by the original building architect, Thomas Vail, as part of an undocumented experiment in what Vail described in his personal journals as reflective memory extraction. Vail believed the human mind projects its memories outward when confronted with prolonged mirror exposure under specific atmospheric conditions. He designed the mirror to capture and retain those projections. I do not fully understand the mechanism, but I have seen the results. The students are not losing their memories. The mirror is collecting them." Sara brought everything to Professor Elaine Marsh. Marsh taught behavioral psychology and had been at Gettysburg for 11 years. She was precise, clinical, unsentimental. Sara expected skepticism. Instead, Marsh closed her office door, sat down slowly, and said, "Where did you find that letter?" "The archives, third box, unlabeled folder." Marsh was quiet for a very long time. That folder was supposed to have been destroyed in 1994. Sara stared at her. "You knew about this?" "I knew about the cases," Marsh said carefully, "not the letter, not Vail's explanation." She stood and walked to her window. "When I first came to this college, I heard the stories. I dismissed them. Then, in my 3rd year here, one of my own students, a brilliant girl, top of her class, began showing symptoms: confusion, dissociation, loss of autobiographical memory. She lived on the 2nd floor of Gladfelter?" Sara said nothing. "I had her moved immediately. She recovered, slowly but fully. I reported it to the administration." "What did they do?" Marsh turned from the window. "They thanked me for my concern. They said the mirror was a historical artifact with significant architectural value. They said there was no scientific basis for my claims." Her voice was completely flat. "And then they moved me to an office on the other side of campus and suggested I focus on my research." Sara leaned forward. "Professor, what does the mirror actually do in scientific terms? What is actually happening?" Marsh sat back down. The human brain stores memories through a process of pattern recognition and emotional encoding. When you look in a mirror, really look for extended periods, your brain enters a unique state. It begins actively reconstructing your self-image using those stored patterns. She paused. Veil somehow designed a surface that interferes with that reconstruction. Instead of the patterns returning to your memory, they transfer outward, into the mirror. The mirror retains them. And the person? The person keeps looking because they can feel something is wrong, but they can't identify what, so they look harder and lose more. Sara felt cold. How much can it take? Marsh met her eyes. Everything. Sara ran back to Glatfelter Hall. She had been gone for 3 hours. She had not told Daniel where she was going. She had not told him about the mirror. She turned the corner onto the second floor and stopped. Daniel was standing in front of the mirror. Had been standing there, she realized, for some time. His posture was too still. His eyes were fixed on his reflection with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not fascination, not vanity, something closer to confusion, like he was looking at someone he almost recognized. "Daniel!" He didn't respond. "Daniel!" He blinked slowly and turned. He looked at her, and for just one moment, just half a second, his expression was completely blank, like a person looking at a stranger. Then it passed. "Hey," he said, "when did you get back? How long have you been standing there?" He frowned. "I don't know. I just stopped for a second on my way back from the library." Sara looked at her phone. He had texted her 2 hours ago saying he was heading back to the dorm. "Daniel, what's my last name?"
He laughed. "What? Just tell me, what's my last name?" A pause. Slight. Almost unnoticeable. "Nolan," he said. "Sara Nolan." "Why are you being weird?" Sara exhaled, but she watched his eyes, and she saw it. The microsecond of searching, like the answer had taken a moment to locate, like it had been slightly further away than it should have been. She grabbed his arm and pulled him away from the mirror. "Don't look at it again," she said. "Not ever." "Sara, what is going on?" "I'll explain everything. Just walk. Don't look back." They walked to the stairwell. Sara did not look back either, but she felt it. The way you feel eyes on you from behind. Patient. Waiting. Like something that had been collecting pieces of people for over 100 years had just found 2 more worth watching. That night, Sara went back. Alone. She needed to understand what it had already taken from Daniel. She needed to see it for herself. Controlled, brief, scientific. She stood 6 feet back from the mirror, set a timer on her phone for 30 seconds, and looked. For the first 15 seconds, nothing. Just her own reflection. Normal. Synchronized. At 20 seconds, she noticed it. Her reflection's eyes were slightly different. Not the color, not the shape, the expression. Her reflection looked calm. Sara did not feel calm. At 25 seconds, her reflection smiled. Sara had not smiled. She looked at her own face in the mirror, and her reflection looked back with an expression she had never made in her life. Comfortable. Settled. Like it had been standing on that side of the glass for years. Like it was home. Sara's timer went off. She stepped back immediately, heart pounding. And in the final moment before she turned away completely, she saw it. Behind her reflection, standing in the mirror's background. Figures. Dozens of them. Standing in the darkness behind her reflection's shoulder, all facing forward. All watching. All with the same calm, settled expression.
All people who had stood where Sara stood, all the ones who had looked too long, all still there, inside the mirror.
Waiting. Sara covered the mirror that night with a bedsheet. She reported everything to the college administration the next morning. They thanked her for her concern. They said the mirror was a historical artifact. They said there was no scientific basis for her claims. 3 days later, the bedsheet was gone, removed by maintenance. The mirror was back, clean, polished, gleaming. Sara stood at the end of the hallway and looked at it from a distance, and in the mirror's reflection of the hallway, her room door was open. Sara looked back at her actual room door. It was closed. She looked at the mirror again. In the reflection, someone was standing in her doorway, looking out, looking directly at the mirror, looking directly at Sara, with Sara's face, with Sara's hair, with Sara's eyes, but smiling a smile that Sara had never made in her life. Calm, settled, home. Gettysburg College has many mirrors on campus. Most of them show you exactly who you are. But the one in Glatfelter Hall, the one with the gold frame, shows you who you were right before it decided to keep you.